Welcome to APSEC Online Sport Program. My name is Ms. Bazarine. I teach in APSEC Fort Road. Today I am going to discuss week 7th lecture of English language and literature. I hope all of you have comprehended the content of chapter 3 of language and the literature as well. Today I will proceed towards the remaining portion of chapter 3, Crime Doesn't Pay, and also discuss chapter number 4 of the novel. Before starting the task, I would like to share the objectives. The objectives are students will be able to write a story about stealing in 200 to 250 words, comprehend the passage about TV previews of different programs, and solve exercises 3 and 4 given on page 49. Predict about the pictures given in chapter 4 and comprehend the content of the novel. They will be able to answer the questions in the activity section of chapter number 4, page 74 and 75. Students will be able to write character sketch of their favorite character from novel or the story that they have selected by themselves and recommend whether they like it or dislike it. Now let's proceed the first topic of this week, story writing. This topic is given to you to enhance your creative writing skill. We all love reading good stories. Have you ever thought what makes a story interesting? The plot, the characters, the fast chain of events, imagery, great vocabulary, or the crisp dialogue. Before writing the story, let me explain you at first the structure of a story writing. The first component of a story writing is opening. Opening means you have to introduce your characters and settings. This is where the threads of the story started. The next component is development. Here you have to explain the events that leads up to the big dilemma in the story. In complication, the story explains the problem your characters have to overcome. Climax. Climax is the most exciting part of the story where all the actions happen. And the last one is resolution. In resolution, we come to know whether the problem is solved or not. Now, the task that is assigned to you is you have to write a story about stealing. Here, give your story a title, and the word limit is 200 to 250 words. In the story, include the following points. Where did the crime take place? Main characters. Who was involved? What happened? How were they caught? What was done about them? Were they given a second chance? Any other detail you would like to include? What is the moral of the story? Okay, now come to the next task that you have to accomplish in this week is about words on TV. As you know, television is an audio-visual communication medium. It has stronger influence upon people and culture. TV is the best way to acquire recent news and information. And it has been a great source of entertainment in the modern world. No one has go out to be entertained. One can watch their favorite programs, talk shows, sitcoms, sports, serials, cooking shows, telefilms, and movies in the comforts of their homes. Before proceeding towards the task related to the TV preview of different weekly program given on page 48, let me make your concept clear about television previews. Television Preview is a market research company that tests new television shows which actually looking for audience reaction. TV previews take no money from viewers. Viewers are asked to rate the show they watch. Now, I hope you have make your concept clear about the TV preview. The task that is assigned to you is students have to read the passage or listen to track 4.3 on page 48, which is about TV previews of different weekly programs. They have to go over the glossary given on page 49 And they also have to complete the following assignments from the student book. Exercise 3. Match the programs in the text to the correct statements. And exercise 4. Answer the given questions. Now, let's proceed towards the English literature. Novel Moby Dick, chapter number 4, pages 26 to 32. Look at the pictures and predict the development in the story. Have you observed the pictures? What do you think is happening in the pictures? Why do you think the 5 mysterious men look frightening on page 27? Can you identify the large animal visible in the ocean on page 31? Now carefully listen the audio track of chapter 4.
Chapter 4. It was about a week after the celebrations, on one particularly warm and sunny afternoon, that we finally heard the familiar call that meant a whale was near.
"There she blows!"
yelled Tashtego from the crow's nest. We looked up to see the harpooner waving and pointing frantically.
"A school of whales about 2 miles east."
He shouted. Chaos broke out on the ship as crew members ran in all directions preparing for the hunt. Once the 3 whaleboats had been lowered into the water, the harpooners and the oarsmen climbed down rope ladders into the boats and prepared to take up their positions. Seconds later, we heard the captain's voice on deck. We looked up and, to our great astonishment, saw Ahab with 5 men dressed in black. Those must be the men we saw boarding the ship in Nantucket, I whispered to Queequeg as we climbed into Starbuck's boat. The harpooner nodded.
"They must have been hiding in the hold,"
he said.
"I wonder why they're here."
I noticed the mates exchange confused glances when they heard the captain tell the mysterious men to untie one of the spare boats and lower it into the ocean. The man who was apparently in charge of the group was a tall, dark-skinned Persian who wore a peculiar turban on his head made from his own braided white hair. His eyes were 2 dark slits, and one tooth poked out from beneath his thin lips. The man's companions had yellow skin, and I assumed were probably from the Philippines.
"Ready, Fedella?"
said the captain, turning to address the dark-skinned man.
"Ready, sir."
Said the man.
"Then let's go!"
The captain's boat dropped into the ocean, and the 4 whaleboats spread out across the water.
"Spread out! Spread out!"
cried Ahab.
"Row, men! Row as if your lives depend on it!"
Yelled Starbuck. We rowed until our arms burnt from the effort. But as we approached the whales, they dived into the water and disappeared. Queequeg explained to me that this was called sounding, and that whales can sound or stay underwater for hours at a time. The only hint of the whale's presence was a mass of green and blue bubbles, which an inexperienced whaler could have easily missed. Suddenly, the whales shot to the surface and began swimming in all directions. The water swirled angrily, and we chased after the animals, aware that the high waves could devour us at any moment.
"Get ready, Queequeg!"
yelled Starbuck. The harpooner jumped to his feet and sat on the edge of the boat, his harpoon shining in his right hand.
"There's one! That's his hump! Get him, Queequeg!"
shouted Starbuck. As the harpooner prepared to take aim, the boat shook violently. It felt as if we'd been hit by an earthquake. The sail collapsed and I felt the boat break beneath me. The whale Queequeg had been aiming at had smashed into us, and we were all tossed into the water helplessly. It took about an hour for the Pequod to rescue us. We learnt later that none of the other boats had much luck either. Our first attempt to capture a whale had been unsuccessful, and, needless to say, the crew was in very low spirits that night. After dinner, the conversation turned to Fedella and his men.
"Say, Starbuck, what do you think of those strange men the captain brought on board?"
asked Stubb. Starbuck shrugged.
"I don't care who he brings with him, as long as they don't get in our way."
Stubb took a puff of his pipe.
Peleg and Bildad probably told the captain not to take part in any whale hunt because of his leg. He obviously decided to bring along his own crew and command his own whale boat. He's a determined man, that Ahab.
Aye, that he is.
Agreed Starbuck.
I'm not sure I like that Fedallah fellow.
Said Stubb after a brief pause.
There's something strange about him. There's a rumor going round that he has the ability to see the future.
Starbuck took a sip of his tea and said nothing. Within a few days, the Pequod had reached the Cape of Good Hope at the very tip of Africa. This was a particularly dangerous stretch of water. Our ship was hammered by fierce storms and rough waves, and there were moments when I was quite convinced that we would sink. It was thanks to Ahab's impressive leadership that we managed to go past the Cape and enter the calmer waters of the Indian Ocean. We followed a northeasterly course towards the island of Java. One morning, Daggoo was sitting in the crow's nest, keeping an eye out for whales, when we heard him shout.
There she blows! There's the white whale!
Immediately the 4 whaleboats were lowered into the ocean, and we rowed like madmen to the spot that Daggoo had indicated. The harpooner had indeed seen something white, but it wasn't Moby Dick. Floating on the water, its long tentacles curling and twisting like deadly snakes, was a giant squid. It was dead. Starbuck shook his head.
That's a bad omen,
He said.
They say that if a whale ship encounters a giant squid, it'll never return home.
We sailed back to the ship in silence. Only Queequeg seemed unconcerned about the squid.
It is a good sign, I think.
He whispered to me.
In my experience, when one sees a giant squid, one is very likely to catch a sperm whale soon after.
My wise friend was right. The next day, we spotted an enormous sperm whale swimming just a few meters from the ship, its glossy black back shining in the midday sun. Again, we lowered the boats into the water, and not wanting to scare the whale off, rowed towards it as quietly as we could. Stubb's boat was closest to the whale, and he ordered Tashtego to get ready for the kill. The harpooner stood up and took aim, making sure that the harpoon line was securely tied to the boat. The harpoon line is a thin piece of rope which is attached to the harpoon at one end and the boat at the other. Whales that have been harpooned often attempt to escape. The line connects the whale with the boat and allows the whalers to continue to pursue the creature if it tries to swim away. It is extremely dangerous to stand in the way of the harpoon line once a harpoon has been thrown. The line becomes as sharp as a sword and can easily kill a man. We watched with excitement as Tashtego's harpoon flew through the air and sank into the whale's side. The harpoon line became tense, and the boat was pulled forward for several minutes at high speed as the whale tried to get away. Stubb threw several spears at the animal, until one finally hit the creature's heart. The whale died in a thick pool of its own red blood. It took all 4 boats and the strength of 36 men to pull the whale back to the Pequod. Upon our return, the whale was chained to the side of the ship. The business of extracting the oil would begin the next day.
Number 4. Reading. Now, come towards the task. The task is that you have to read chapter 4 again to answer the questions in activity section. In chapter 4, we have learned about the 5 mysterious men, the sign of the whales and the sailors, unsuccessful attempt to capture the whales, and we also realized how difficult it was to hunt a whale. Now, you have to do the exercise 1 of comprehension, exercise 3 of vocabulary, and you also have to find 3 verbs, 3 adjectives, and 3 nouns from chapter 4. In week 6, you had been told by the teacher about the importance of reading books other than your curriculum. She had also given you tasks to select and start reading any book. Hopefully, you have worked on it. Now, complete the reading of your favorite novel or short story started in week 6. And you have to answer the following questions. Write briefly what the story is about. Write on character sketch from the novel or short story that you have selected for yourself and their importance in the story. Did you like or dislike him or her? Give reasons. Did you like the story and would you recommend it to others? Give reasons. Well, students, that's all about week 7. I hope today's lecture helped you in understanding of the chapter and solving the exercises. Thank you.